we're going to go to this in Carter Encyclopedia, and we're going to look up the Hebrew language and how it transpired from the biblical Hebrew all the way to modern Hebrew, to show you how things have been changed and why people put too much stock in having the way you call the name of the Lord. Okay, so in Carter Encyclopedia, read Hebrew.
Hebrew language. Ancient Hebrew, the language of the Bible, was succeeded by an intermediary form, Mishnaic Hebrew.
So now, first you got ancient Hebrew, then you got Mishnaic Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
About the 3rd century BC. Modern Hebrew, the only vernacular tongue based on an ancient written form, was developed in the 19th and 20th century.
So now, you got biblical Hebrew, you got Mishnaic Hebrew, and then you got modern Hebrew. So you got 3 types of Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
Biblical Hebrew. The language in which most of the Old Testament was written dates as a living language from the 12th to the 2nd century BC at the latest.
So now, this was the oldest language, okay? And it dates from the, what, 12th to the 2nd BC, right? 2nd century BC. Okay, go ahead.
The territory of Phoenicia adjoined Canaan, and it is probable that Hebrew in its earliest form was almost identical to Phoenician.
So now, it's not a religion that only the Israelites had, but I mean a language that the Israelites had. It was a language that other people had with it. Okay, go ahead.
Of the closely related Hebrew and Phoenician language groups, however, Hebrew is decidedly the more important. From about the 3rd century BC, the Jews in Palestine came to use Aramaic in both speech and secular writings.
And we're going to show you that today, because we're going to show you how after Israel got carted off into slavery, they went into other countries and they picked up their language, and then when they got those other sounds and pronunciations, they added it to the Hebrew language, and that's why they call it the Mishnaic Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
Jews outside Palestine spoke in the language of the countries in which they had settled.
Same way with us. We got brought over here, and we don't speak Hebrew. We don't speak Aramaic. We speak what? We speak English. But then why we do that? Because we in the land of English-speaking people. So quite naturally, whatever we do with our names and our language, we're gonna do it according to the land that we live in. Right. Okay, go ahead.
Hebrew was preserved, however, as a language of ritual and sacred writing, and through the centuries has undergone periodic literary revivals.
So now, this Hebrew, or this modern Hebrew, has went through periodic revisions. Okay, go ahead.
Post-biblical Hebrew.
So now we on the second, post-biblical Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
The Mishnaic or Rabbinic Hebrew, dating from about AD 200, was a language of the Mishnah. It was solely a written language, but was more adaptable to practical use than biblical Hebrew.
So now, it was solely a written language, okay? But we're going to see how it became oral language. Okay, go ahead.
The vocabulary and syntactic innovations were strongly Aramaic, and words were borrowed from Greek, Latin, and Persian.
So now, we know now it's not pure no more.
Right.
We know other languages came into it, and you know, like, we're going to find out how it's done, but they added other syntax to it to make the vowels or the consonants come in. Okay, go ahead.
New meanings and forms were given to biblical Hebrew words, and the expression of time were clarified.
Go ahead.
Hebrew vocabulary was further augmented in the Middle Ages by the Arabic influence on philosophic writing and through translations.
Go ahead.
Arabic philosophical and scientific works. From the 9th century on, the use of Hebrew declined.
So now, because it's being transferred into the Aramaic, the use of biblical Hebrew declined, because now you're in the Mishnaic Hebrew. Because they adding words, they doing all these revisions to it. Now we're going to get into the modern Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
Modern Hebrew. When Jews moved to Palestine in the 19th century, Hebrew was revived as a spoken language.
So now it's saying the Jews that's over in the land now revived the language, and we're going to find out that this language was revived by adding Indo-Europeanism to it. And we're going to find out that the people that's over there calling themselves Jews got something else going on with the language. So if you say you speak modern Hebrew, then you better check out where it come from. Okay, go ahead.
Modern Hebrew, or Ivrit, was declared the official language of Israel in 1948.
So now that's when they moved back in the land, claiming they've been gathered again. But that's another lesson. But we let you know that they call themselves speaking modern Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
The language is written from right to left and employs an alphabet of 22 characters. The vocabulary is based on biblical Hebrew and the syntax on Mishnaic Hebrew.
So now they said that's what is added, the biblical Hebrew and the Mishnaic Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
Long vowels are generally expressed in writing by unpronounced consonant sounds. Scriptures, children's books, and poetry use the Masoretic points, which are dots or dashes to indicate vowels.
So now, with the Masoretic text, you know how they put a little hyphen over your name and you pronounce it a different way? That's what he's talking about. Like with the letter I, if it's a small I, they put a dot on top of it. That's what syntax is all about. So now you really have to understand language in order to understand how these vowels and all these things were added to it to make it more understandable when you read it. Okay, go ahead.
Pronunciation is modeled on that of the Sephardic Jews who lived mainly in Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria.
So now, wait a minute, it was added from what? From people that was added from the Indo-European countries to add to the biblical Hebrew because they thinking they true Israelites. But that's another lesson. We can prove that that's opposite of that. But believe me, the language they speaking right now is not pure Hebrew. Okay, go ahead.
A great number of new words, particularly scientific terms, were needed in order to adapt the ancient written language to contemporary use.
So now, they didn't have names for like airplane. They didn't have names for like biology. They didn't have names for like car. So they had to add these, names into the language. Okay, go ahead.
The Lithuanian-born scholar Eliezer ben Yehuda single-handedly coined 4,000 new words from biblical Hebrew roots.
So that means he made up some words. But where they get all it from? They got it from these syntax and all these Mishnaic stuff, and they just kept on reviving it and kept on reviving it. Okay, go ahead.
The national languages of Israeli immigrants and Yiddish, the language of the Ashkenazi, or Eastern European Jews, have also influenced modern Hebrew.
So now, the modern Hebrew even got Yiddish in it, and the language of the Ashkenazi Jews is mixed in with it. So this language is not pure. So even if you say you speak pure Hebrew, then tell me certain things in Hebrew. Don't talk in English at all. And we're going to find out if you talk in another language, you know what? You ain't doing nothing but babbling. And you better make sure you know how to pronounce the name correctly. And because believe me, we're going to read some names and we're going to find out which way they could be pronounced, which way they may be pronounced, but nobody can put a definite, accurate statement on it because the Hebrew language was in decline. So when your language is in decline, you all of a sudden forget how to pronounce certain words. Even if you can read them, you forget how to pronounce them, plain and simple. Okay.